What if hiring could be easier, more streamlined, and less time-consuming, so even when you're busy, you could still be smart about the way you hire? With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click, so you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates. Then, ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you receive the best possible matches. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you, it finds them. And it's no wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by growing businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That is right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. That's ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M.
Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
Glad you are with us on this Wednesday morning on Golic and Wingo, whether it's on ESPN Radio or ESPN2 or on the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and Jon Gruden will join us in a little bit to talk about what his takeaways were of the Monday night game when the Patriots lost to the Miami Dolphins and what that means for the Patriots going forward into a huge matchup, one of several huge matchups, by the way, Week 15 as they go to Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that could determine home field advantage in the AFC, although it still could play out differently. And look, the Jacksonville Jaguars, believe it or not, in a weird way, are still involved in that race because of the win they had 30-9 over the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this year. So we'll get to that with John in a minute. But people announce their retirement, and sometimes they've been retired,
right?
And then they announce their retirement. And I think this player falls into that category. Devin Hester has been retired for a while. He just then announced his official retirement.
Maybe he didn't really want to be retired, or nobody's calling. At some point, you have to figure out that I'm going to retire. Listen, I didn't want to retire
for you.
I didn't want to retire when I retired.
No, exactly right.
No, I retired because all the teams didn't call anymore, so it was kind of a forced retirement, which, quite honestly, is most of the way people retire in professional sports. Not that you really want to.
Right. So Devin Hester officially made it official by announcing his retirement. And he walks away as the leading returner in the history of the NFL, which means he has more return touchdowns, punts, kicks, interceptions, missed field goals. He had one of those against the Giants on a Sunday night game, a few years ago. He's done that better than anybody else in the history of the NFL. And it brings up an interesting question, because we just had a few years ago at the Hall of Fame, Ray Guy become the first dedicated punter put into the Hall of Fame. The only guy whose only job was to punt. There have been other quarterbacks and other players who have done other things and punted and got into the NFL. Sammy Baugh, obviously, probably the most notable among those, the longtime Washington quarterback who was also an unbelievable punter. But Ray Guy did one thing, and he did it better than anybody else. He punted the football, and he was a difference maker for the Raiders for all those years. Devin Hester is the best returner of footballs for touchdowns in the history of the NFL. Is that a Hall of Fame worthy resume?
Well, you would think if you're the best in something that it would, but it took us long enough to get a punter in, which to me is a joke.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a Hall of Fame of football. There are different positions on a football field. One of them is returner, but I think a lot of people get them because I know there was a lot of talk of a special teamer, not so much a kicker, return man, punter, but a lot of people would talk of like a Steve Tasker who was actually in my draft in '85 when we both got drafted by the Houston Oilers before he went to the Buffalo Bills, and talking about him as a Hall of Fame special teamer. I don't know if we'll ever get someone like that who's that cover guy, that pure type of special teamer. Devin Hester, because he was a receiver as well.
Yeah, he had back-to-back 50-catch seasons.
Exactly, so he did that as well. But when your main job, you're the best at returning kicks, I don't know why there wouldn't be a spot for that. I mean, as far as non-offensive touchdowns, he has 20. Deion Sanders has 19. Rod Woodson has 17. Now, Deion and Rod are in the Hall of Fame for the position they played.
Correct.
They added on, which certainly added to their resume. But if they never returned, kicks for any time, or I guess part of being a DB is getting a pick six as well. But they were some of the greatest defensive backs to ever play, so they were going to be in the Hall of Fame. So I'm just thinking of other sports where you have just certain positions of where if you're the best at it, why wouldn't you be in the Hall of Fame? He's the best person to return a kicked ball, right?
And that's a skill set. That's it. Now, listen, it's different now because the NFL is trying to sort of legislate a lot of that out of the game with the way they're handling kick returns, especially kickoffs, more than punt returns, but kick returns specifically. But, it took forever to get a second pure kicker in the NFL or the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You had Jan Stenerud, who was the one for many, many years.
Right.
And then just this past year, Morten Andersen, the Great Dane, became the second just pure kicker in the NFL.
Would this be like a reliever in baseball?
That's
if you're not talking about a starter or that closer, that guy that comes in for those last rounds, a reliever. How about someone who's throwing the middle innings?
Yeah, I was going to say like a middle reliever,
because
Mariano Rivera is going to walk into the Hall of Fame.
Exactly right. Yeah,
that's
middle reliever.
Well, that's an interesting question.
If that's your job,
because to me, a middle reliever, as good as and important as they are, they're basically setup men, for the guy who's really going to seal the deal. Whereas a kick returner by himself,
aren't you setting up your offense for some really good field position?
Yes, but
then you take it to the end zone,
right? Exactly. My point is, he could be the deal sealer as well as the setup guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Actually, it would be great if we find out what are his average yards on returns as opposed to where they sit in terms of the relation, because that actually could make a better case. I mean, I'm looking at his career. The average on the returns average receiving yards was 13 yards per catch.
Kick returns. I have his kickoff returns. He averaged 20, just one tick, say 25 yards a return.
That's pretty good.
For kickoff return.
25 yards on a return is pretty good.
His punt returns, he averaged just about 12 yards a punt return and 25 yards a kickoff return. It's pretty darn good.
I'd like to know where those stand if we could to figure that out, because I think that would either bolster or weaken the case significantly because in other words, it's kind of like a home run hitter. How many times you're going to hit one over the fence and how many times you're going to strike out?
For the number of it, he had 295 kick returns, and he had 315 punt returns.
Yeah.
So those are pretty healthy averages, but you're right, where that would stand as far as overall averages.
Now, why don't we put that up as a Twitter poll? Find out what's going on. Do you think, first of all, well, let's put it this: should a returner,
be a kick returner,
just as a skill set, should a kick returner be something that should be considered in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Because look, he did it on the biggest stages possible. I mean, he started Super Bowl 41 against the Colts with a kick return for a touchdown against Indianapolis, which eventually they went on to win 29-17. But if you think about it, the Bears scored 17 points in that game. And he scored one of the only 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And it was on a kick return to start the game. You couldn't have had a better setup to that game if you're Chicago with Rex Grossman as your quarterback going against Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Dominique Rhodes and all those players, that to get sort of your team on the edge and get them going. He did that, and of course, it still wasn't enough.
It's interesting to be the best in your sport at something.
And there's no question that he has been.
The best at non-offensive touchdowns. He's the best at it, but should that get Hall of Fame recognition?
And again, by the numbers, 5 kick returns, 4 in his first 2 seasons, 20 non-offensive touchdowns in his NFL career, 16 receiving touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. So it wasn't just those things.
No, it was not.
Is that other stuff enough?
So we'll put that up at Golic and Wingo. You also can go to at Wingo's with a Z at ESPN Golic as well. That's it. I'm sure football people would want to give the respect to a football player that does that and say be in the Hall of Fame. I'd be wonder to hear what others would think about that.
Well, why don't we hear from one of those others right now? As our Monday Night Football analyst Jon Gruden joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. And John, I don't know how much of that conversation you heard, but it is sort of an interesting discussion with Devin Hester. Look, obviously he didn't do things around the return game as much as other people have, but he has more of those kind of scores than anybody in NFL history. In your mind, have you thought about the idea of maybe we have just someone who's specifically a returner of the football be eligible for the Hall of Fame?
Why not? I mean, that's the way the world's going. We're making exceptions for just about everything these days. I think there is a place for Devin Hester to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, so people do remember his accomplishments. But I think the criteria at the Hall of Fame is a little bit different. I think you have to play a certain amount of snaps. I think it's for the every down players. In some ways, maybe it does discriminate against punters and kickers and returners and coverage people. But perhaps there will be a special place for Devin Hester. I know there should be. I would imagine there are some markings in the Hall of Fame of him already without him having to be enshrined.
And maybe something that won't help his cause so much is punt returns, 11.7 for a career. That's tied for 8th. Kickoff returns at 25 yards per is tied for 67th. Now, the people ahead of him, had they done it less, we could break that down a little more. But an interesting thing, either way, Devin Hester retiring from football with the most non-offensive touchdowns in NFL history. All right, John, what in the wide world of sports happened to the Patriots last Monday?
I'm surprised you asked that, Mike. You know, we all know it's kryptonite when New England goes to Miami, South Florida. They haven't traditionally been as dominant on the road in Miami for whatever reason, whether it's the hotel or the sleep service. I don't know what it is, but they got manhandled. You go 0 for 11 on third down, you're not going to win the game. They lose the turnover battle, which they never do. Mike, they're missing a lot of great players. If you just pull up their defense, their world championship defense from a year ago, and then look at the 11 men that played on defense against the Miami Dolphins, and you'll see they're up against a real difficult opponent this week in Pittsburgh. I don't know how they're getting as many stops as they are. I don't know how this defense over 8 weeks was giving up 12 points a game. They're missing a lot of firepower on defense. Rob Gronkowski not playing is a huge deal. I saw him struggle without Gronkowski on the road at Tampa earlier, and they weren't the same team in Miami without Gronk either. And they're missing Marcus Cannon, their right tackle. Mm-hmm. They're missing a lot of Patriots, and for that reason, they have struggled a little bit the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting, John. The last 2 games, even though they won pretty convincingly in Buffalo, the offense also seemed a little sluggish. It was the defense that sort of carried them through that game as they got after Tyrod Taylor, and he had to leave that game, and obviously they were limited when Nathan Peterman came in. But you look at the last 2 games, Brady has thrown 3 interceptions and 1 touchdown. Is it something that you're seeing in Brady, or the players that are around him that aren't there is a bigger concern for you?
Well, the latter part of that is a bigger concern for me. I'm not concerned about Brady whatsoever. You know, you lose Gronkowski, that's one thing. Remember, they're missing Julian Edelman, who led their team in receptions a year ago. They're missing LeGarrette Blount, who had 18 rushing touchdowns, a franchise record. They're missing their right tackle, and they're missing most of their defense. I think they're going to continue to have to win some games unpatriot-like. They might have to win a couple ugly games like you're talking about against Buffalo on the road. But Tom Brady is still a great quarterback. I don't have any reservations about that. I've studied him enough, but they do need to find other ways, other players to get involved. And I think Josh McDaniels done a great job. They just did not have a good night against the Dolphins.
Is there just a point, John, and because you have Tom Brady, they always get the benefit of the doubt. It's just like with Aaron Rodgers is on the field. Oh, well, they have Aaron Rodgers, so they have a chance. But at some point, do you just say, and maybe do we think the Patriots might be there even though they only have 3 losses, but we're talking about a Super Bowl championship or bust for them, that sometimes there's just too much to overcome with lack of talent on the field, maybe because of injury or whatever other reason?
Yeah, I think that's the case, Mike. I mean, for us to think Tom Brady's lost it, I hear people saying Tom Brady's lost it, he's 40, he's over the hill. He had 3,700 yards and 26 touchdowns and 4 picks. He was ripping the league up. He was the MVP candidate, number 1 overall, if you ask me, on tape. He has a bad night without Gronkowski, and they're missing too many guys from last year's team right now. Hopefully Trey Flowers, Kyle Van Noy, Marcus Cannon, Rob Gronkowski, those are 4 big-time players now. Hopefully they come back and suit it up on the road against Pittsburgh, and that'll make things very interesting.
Yeah, Jon Gruden with us here on Golic and Wingo. To that point, when the Patriots lost in the AFC Championship game to Denver that year, and the Broncos and Panthers made it to the Super Bowl. I think combined that year, the Broncos and Panthers had 17 players on injured reserve, and the Patriots had something like 21. So health is always going to play a part in this. But we now have, John, what could be an epic showdown Sunday in Pittsburgh with the Steelers getting Juju Smith-Schuster back after scoring 39 points and Ben passing for 500 yards without him. And now you get Gronkowski back for Tom Brady. Look, the question then becomes for this game, because of the Steelers' issues on defense and some of the things you alluded to with the Patriots and their holes on defense right now, and whether or not some of those players will be back. Is this game going to come down to who, for what could be, by the way, home field advantage in the AFC, essentially whoever has the ball last?
Yeah, possibly. It sounds like a shootout to me. When you look at the Steeler defense, they're missing, obviously, Ryan Shazier, and you can't underestimate how great he was. He was a every down performer. He was good against the run and pass, and he could chase down plays and make help prevent a long run. They're also missing Joe Hayden. I don't know if Hayden's going to be back. He's their best cornerback. And Mike Mitchell's been up and down with injuries at safety. Those are three key Pittsburgh Steelers. And, like I say, it's going to be a shootout. I do believe that. The Patriots are depleted on defense, but you have Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, with all the chips on the table. You can't miss this game. I just got to say this. The winning edge to me for the Pittsburgh Steelers is their offensive line. I think if you really look deep from left tackle to right tackle, led by Mike Munchak, their great offensive line coach, I think the Steelers win it because of their overall dominance up front on the offensive line.
I'm Monday Night Football analyst Jon Gruden joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Of course, coach winning a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay has them this Monday, the Falcons at Tampa Bay. Another big game is going to be the Carolina Panthers, who are sitting in a wild card spot right now against visiting Green Bay Packers, who are on the outside looking in, kind of a long shot to make the playoffs, but still have a chance. And here you are, John. I know we've asked you, and I've asked other coaches before as well, how you treat a injured player coming back, and in this case, Aaron Rodgers. So he's cleared medically to go. Is that all you need to hear as a head coach if you're kind of still in the playoffs? How do you decide how you want to use Aaron Rodgers, or is it clearly just if the medical staff says he goes, he goes?
Well, you have to ask, obviously, the doctors if that's the case, and if it is the case, you go right to Aaron Rodgers and ask him what he feels. How prepared are you? How do you feel about going out here after missing a lengthy period of time, bad weather games, big games on the road, et cetera? Have a great conversation with him. And also you got to take a good look at how he's looked on the practice field. All I've heard is raving reviews of him throwing the ball on the practice field with his teammates. The electricity goes way up when number 12 walks in the building and is a green light go. But I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. If the doctors say so and A-Rod says, hey, I want to play, I say let's go play and make the playoffs. Even if we have to back in like we did last year, they went all the way to the NFC Championship by rallying late, and they got to have Rodgers.
Trey and I completely agree with that, playing him right now. Now let me add one question to that. Let's do what we do. This is what we sit here and we look ahead.
We project, John.
And now we say Aaron Rodgers plays, goes to Carolina, but they lose that game. So now basically they're out of the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs now. Is there any thought in your mind as a coach to say, okay, we're going to now sit you the last two games? Why take a chance of re-injuring this thing? Let's just get to the end of the season and get you completely healthy for next season.
I think you're dealing with the wrong man. I think you're dealing with the wrong cat. When you get on the airplane, and I remember asking Derek Brooks after we clinched the NFC South after our 15th game, I said, Derek, next week's game means nothing. The seeding means absolutely nothing. Why don't we sit you down? You played a lot of football. He looked at me like he was going to beat me up. These guys want to play. These guys love to play. Their signature, their defining moments are on the grass with their teammates. If Rodgers is good to go, you really think he's going to go there and hold a clipboard and watch Brett Hundley? I doubt it.
Well, let's put you squarely in the Herm Edwards camp, then.
You play to win the game.
There you go.
There you go. So John and Herm are cut from the same cloth. Yeah, there's no question. Good. There's no question about it. All right, so we've hit you with a lot of football questions here, but there was an interesting note in the Monday night game. We saw you sitting together with Guy Fieri, the chef, and making some of those Cuban sandwiches and inhaling them, by the way. How much fun was that for you?
Hey, you got no idea. If you can get Guy to come to ESPN and cook for you guys, he is really some kind of character and a great friend. I've become really good friends with Guy. I got to go down to South Florida yesterday in Havana, and we went and filmed an episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. I got to sit in the 1968 car that he drives around. It was awesome. I got to help cook some Cuban sandwiches, and we just had a blast. He's an upbeat football fan, big Raider fan, and that was a heck of a sandwich. I had a hard time wrapping my mouth around that thing.
Oh, it looked good.
I was about to say Golick was drooling.
Would have loved it.
Oh,
Golick would love. Golick, you would love hanging out with Guy.
Oh, I want to so badly.
You and Guy Fieri, you guys would be. Now you might have to go back to your Notre Dame days when you were really eating. You got all these Slim Fast commercials. Now you're looking too good.
And I would love to be. I love that show, Diners, Drive-Ins, and I love that show. I think it's a great show, and I would have loved to try that sandwich. There's no doubt about that.
Well, look, a sandwich for you this past Monday, and a real big honor for you, John, coming up this next Monday. You're going into the Bucs Ring of Honor in the Monday night game when the Bucs welcome in the Falcons. What does that mean to you, my friend?
Yeah, my dad coached with the Bucs. I've been with this franchise really since 1982. My dad worked for John McKay. My dad drafted Steve Young. He drafted Bo Jackson, although they didn't work out. Some of my best friends are in Tampa and in this organization, so it's going to be humbling, obviously very emotional for me, and I just can't wait to reunite with the Super Bowl champion team and a lot of Buccaneers that I grew up with. And big reason I'm in football and love football is being a coach's son, running around with James Wilder and catching passes from Doug Williams and hanging out with Hugh Green and the guys.
Very cool.
That's great
Very
stuff.
Cool.
James Wilder, running back out of the University of Missouri, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
John, congratulations. By the way, I love the fact that we had you talking about Guy Fieri, so you can actually say, I love that guy. Which is the Jon Gruden. I love that guy. The Jon Gruden
I love
catchphrase.
that guy.
Absolutely. And, John, we're thrilled for you
we are.
for the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. After the season's over, I know we'll get together and talk about the draft, which is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of quarterbacks, John, might go in the first round of this draft, which makes it very interesting.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper, he downgrades everybody, and they'll probably fall into the third round. We got to start getting on Kiper's case. But thanks for the nice words. You guys have a great week, and see you soon.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
All right, we roll on here. Glad you're with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. A big night last night for the Knicks as they beat Lonzo Ball and the Lakers in overtime. And Ramona Shelburne, our senior writer for ESPN.com, was there, and she joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Ramona, Lonzo led the Lakers, playing 40 minutes last night. How important was it for to play in the fourth quarter and the OT last night despite the loss?
I mean, it's important for him to step up in situations where the guy who you're hoping can be at least a core player of your franchise, if not the face of your franchise, is supposed to shine, right? I mean, it's Madison Square Garden. If you can't play well there, then you shouldn't be in this game. And I thought it was a good moment for him because I've kind of been there for his first summer league game, his first Staples Center game, and he's generally tended to have poor games in those big moments, and this is the first time he really had that big game on the big stage. Well,
he certainly did, but they came up a little short. How would you rate Lonzo's season so far? So much talk about him, coming into the draft and how he played really well at times in the summer league. And what do you think where do you think he's sort of leveling off now?
I mean, it's really just the confidence in his shooting. I mean, everything else is there. Like, you watch it, and, like, you ask opponents, too. So I oftentimes will ask veterans in the league, like, especially guys who played against him. So I'd go over to Jimmy Butler, you know, and you go, like, last night, we talked to Michael Beasley, just guys who've been around and who've seen other rookies who've been rookies themselves. And people love him. I mean, like, I remember the one guy I couldn't believe was just going off about how great he was Boogie Cousins. Like people really like his game because he plays that unselfish, up-tempo style. He makes really quick decisions. He's a great point guard. I mean, he's the kind of guy you want to play with, right? Because he's not really looking for his own shot all the time. The problem is you can't not look for your own shot all the time, right? Especially if you're going to be that big a focal point of the offense. But you see that feel for the game that everybody talked about with him. What we haven't seen yet is a consistent aggressiveness. And if you're not consistently aggressive, the defenses are going to scheme for that. They're just going to sag off you. And if they don't really respect your shot and your ability to make it, then you're going to be Rajon Rondo. And I think it's way, way, way too early to say what kind of player he's going to be in the NBA. But when he came into the league, everything we all thought, which was, you know, he could be Rajon Rondo, he could be Ricky Rubio, he could be Jason Kidd. You've seen flashes of all three of those comps.
Really have, and such a cerebral kid, too, the way he sees the court. Yeah. It's really, really fun to watch that, and we'll see where his game goes. He has a long way to go, and we know what comes along with that, Ramona. You're around that a lot more than we are. To me, his dad, LeVar, has become kind of white noise. Nothing affects me on what he says anymore. I just think about the kids and the situations that they're in. But obviously it affected, or it seems to have affected, the Lakers enough to have a meeting with LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball, critical of teammates who didn't pass to Lonzo at one point, critical of the coaching as well. And we know he's going to speak his mind. So while it may be white noise to people like Trey and I, and not there so much. So what went on in that meeting, and was there anything agreed to in that meeting?
Yeah, I think, you know, I had heard about this about a week or two, maybe a week and a half ago, kind of right after it happened. And then he and I didn't, you know, I didn't know exactly what it was, right? So I have to go report it out. You have to talk to people and find out exactly what was said and who was there and what the tenor of the meeting was. And so finally last night I was able to get enough of the sourcing there, and then LeVar Ball was there and he was willing to, I said, you know, I'm writing this. What's your side of the story here? And he said, you know, the version I had heard was the Lakers essentially said to him, "Hey man, you got to tone it down when we're talking about the criticism of the coach and other players. We want you to be able to say whatever you want to say. You're a private citizen. We knew what we were doing when we were drafting you. We knew who you were. The Lakers are one of those teams that are sort of they like the drama, right? It's LA. You know, in Hollywood, like the worst that you can be is boring. So they're fine with all of it as long as you still play well on the court." But when you say negative stuff about your teammates and the coach, it does create a negative atmosphere. And so what they asked him was just keep it positive. And if you have something negative to say, come to us first before you talk to the media. And last night when I asked LeVar about it, he said, "Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. I mean, don't get it twisted though. This was a really good thing that they talked to me, and I felt really good about that. And the lines of communication were open, but I'm still going to say what I'm going to say because I've been coaching Lonzo his whole life, and I know what makes my son tick, and I know how to get the best out of him. So I might plant some seeds sometime still." Was anything settled? I don't know. The Lakers, I know, walked away from that meeting feeling like they had a good understanding of LeVar, and he was going to try to be more positive, or he was going to try to at least, you know, think before he says certain types of things. But you know, literally that meeting was 2 weeks ago, and then the next week he went and did a whole nother round of interviews. I think that was when he was on CNN and the Today Show, and some of that was with his younger sons who were going to, you know, LiAngelo was pulled out of UCLA, and obviously LaMelo had been pulled out of high school earlier, but some of that was that kind of a tour. But then he went on and criticized Luke Walton again in a serious interview. So it was, you know, how effective that was remains to be seen.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it really took. So we'll see if there have to be another meeting about that going forward. Ramona Shelburne joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and she has a piece right now, The Greatest Story Ever Trolled, which is a great title, by the way. A deep dive into how Joel Embiid has turned the Sixers' fame process into performance. It's now on ESPN.com, and you can download and listen to the Double Truck podcast on the ESPN app. What can you tell us about the unprecedented access you had to Embiid, and what did you learn from this process, usual word, that you didn't know maybe before you started this piece?
Yeah, well, I went into this like, as when you're a writer, there's certain things that people say or do that make you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm interested in this guy. Like, what is this? And for me, last year I caught him in New Orleans at the All-Star game. I remember he made a big campaign to try to get into the game.
Yep.
And didn't get in, but he still showed up, and he was sitting there by himself courtside. And I was like, what are you doing here, man? I want to see it up close. I want to have fun. And I go, what? That's interesting. Like, you still show up, right? Like, wait, are you trolling the league, or you just want to be here to be around it because you want to be here someday? And he's like, look, I'm just trying to have as much fun as I can before everybody turns on me. And it was such a statement. I was like, wow, that was, in a way, it felt kind of dark, right? Like, oh, that's fatalistic, right? But on the other hand, it showed this incredible understanding of the fame cycle. And I thought for a minute, I was like, this is like a 22-year-old kid from Cameroon who didn't speak English 6 years ago, let alone play basketball. And somehow he's like now in the United States trolling on Twitter and having fun. And like, he has a personality like Shaquille O'Neal. And everybody likes this kid, right? Like nobody's even close to turning on him. And he had just like the 31 best games you had seen as a rookie ever, pretty much. And he says something like that, and I was like, how did you understand the fame cycle of like where we build you up and tear you down and then build you back up again after you feel bad? How do you get that? And that was the beginning of the whole thing. I was just like, I want to understand this kid.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said that. Why did he give you a reason of why he thought eventually people would turn on him?
Yeah, he said, everybody just so likes something new. He goes, people always are going to prefer somebody new. He goes, it happens to everybody. Steph Curry, and what's Steph ever done? But then people turn on him and LeBron and Russell Westbrook, and it was kind of like this. It wasn't exactly cynical, right? I mean, it was cynical, and yet it was more of an understanding. And I think the more I spent time with him, that was kind of the jumping off point of our conversation. And we were in a car together for like 2 hours driving from Sacramento driving from San Francisco to Sacramento, where they were going to play a game. And I said, hey, what is that? That was how did you know that? How did you understand that? And the more he talked, the more I could hear it in his voice. Like, it's not like he's afraid of it. He kind of knows it's coming, and it's almost like he's preparing himself for it to be in this world where, like, maybe we don't think he's funny anymore. Maybe he crosses the line. And I was like, is this something that he wants or something that he needs? And I started to think about Embiid and kind of his personality a little bit more, and I go, oh, like, he needs this. He needs the sound of people, because his teammates would all say, when people chant "trust the process," like if they don't chant it, he gets upset, right? And they'll start egging the crowd on, and it's like, oh, this guy loves this stuff. He's like an internet troll. Like, he's one of those people on Twitter who will say something at you just to get a rise out of you, and that's what makes him better. And Embiid was like, yeah, when I'm on the road and people are like, Joel, you suck. He's like, I love that. If they don't chant it, I feel like it makes me sleepy.
Big man, a big man with a big personality. You got to love it. I'm with you, like Shaq. You got to love, because we know a lot of big guys that kind of are a little more introverted. Certainly not Shaq. Certainly not Embiid. It's a great story. We're talking to Ramona Shelburne on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, a 3-time academic All-American at Stanford, playing softball. And I love this. Your mom, Jeanette, was a professional screenwriter for children's TV shows. Very, very cool there. I want you to answer the one question we asked this morning.
Yeah.
Away from Lonzo, away from Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
If you could only have one on your team, would you take Kristaps Porzingis or Ben Simmons?
Oh.
And again, we preface there is no wrong answer.
I'm going to go Simmons. Look, that's a really hard question, but because of how good they both are, and like I love Porzingis' game, I worry a little bit more about his health long term than I do about Simmons' health long term, and I'm going to knock on wood really loud as I say that in my hotel room here. But because Simmons is eventually going to learn to shoot. He's not going to shoot left-handed anymore. Like this offseason, they're going to just make him a right-handed shooter, I think, because it's clear that's what he should be. But his game, he has LeBron James kind of potential. Like, he could be that good. And he's a playmaker. So,
but he's missed an entire season already.
I know. I just am knocking on the wood as we talk because it's so good. I'm nervous about both of them. But, I think I'm always going to go with the great point guard playmaker over the great big man because the big man needs the point guard to get him the ball. So that's just always my preference.
All right, Ramona, we appreciate it. Thanks for the insight. And the story is really good. You can check it out on ESPN.com. The greatest story ever trolled.
Love that.
Ramona, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, y'all.
Big news out of Cleveland.
Yes.
It does not involve the Cavs.
No, it does not.
Nor does it involve the Browns.
It involves no sports.
None whatsoever.
At all, by the way.
But perhaps one of the most iconic things in Cleveland.
Yes, it does. Next April 14th, in Cleveland, the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We have our inductees.
There you go. Class of 2018.
Yep, inductees. Here you go. The award for early influence, Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Congratulations.
And then your performer category, we have Nina Simone, who you're going back to the 50s and the 60s. The Moody Blues, Dire Straits, The Cars, and Bon Jovi. So congratulations to all of them going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I always find it interesting what is classified as rock and roll, because so many different kinds of music.
Sure.
It seems like it's all sort of gone into popular music.
Should we do the Music Hall of Fame instead of the Rock and Roll?
Maybe.
Because rock and roll, you do kind of think of one thing,
right,
and it leaves out other genres, I think.
Like, for example, we have some Bon Jovi we could play, right? Yeah, there you go. By the way, Bon Jovi once came to the Sports Center commercial here. We took over the newsroom. It was very fun.
Listen, we spent a lot of time, Greeny and I, of time with Bon Jovi when he was part of the Philadelphia Soul.
Yeah.
He and Ron Jaworski, when Greeny and I were calling the arena games, we did a lot of Philadelphia games. We talked to Bon Jovi all the time and got to know him pretty well. So, and obviously he did okay for him in his music career.
Also
okay
true.
for himself.
Also
Did
true.
well.
Also, we have some Cars. Very good band, late 70s, 80s, and continued for a while, right?
Do we have any Cars?
We have any Cars? No,
we don't have any Cars.
All right. Well, there you go.
We're testing Cliff over there. Please tell me, do we have any Moody Blues? Moody Blues? We have no Moody Blues at all.
Do we have Dire Straits? We have Dire Straits?
We have Dire Straits?
Yeah, good. All right, good.
You know what we should have maybe done is waited for another hour or so for the segment and got the rest of those songs.
That would require forethought and planning on our part.
Yeah, good point.
Well, actually, I think it's important that maybe Cliff stumbles a little bit. We don't want...
We like that. We're not knocked him down. We just knocked him down a peg a little bit.
It's the Joel Embiid thing, right? We build him up, and he knows we're eventually going to turn on him, and that's what's going to happen. Because I want you to know, I got a delivery at the house from my friends at Cutter and Buck, and tons of great pullovers and shirts and sweaters and all this kind of stuff. And they said in the note, if Cliff is the same size as you, please give some stuff to Cliff because the music has been on point.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
So we just knocked him down a peg here.
You just got to make sure everybody understands it's still we're all trusting the process here. We're all trusting the process.
Congrats, though, to all of them. I'm a big Moody Blues fan. Wildest Dreams. I really a big fan of them. Love that song, but I do like them. Other nominees that didn't make it, the likes of Kate Bush, Depeche Mode,
Eurythmics, they're worthy.
The Jay Giles Band, Judas Priest.
You got another thing coming if you think they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, there you go. LL Cool J, Radiohead, Rage Against the Machine, the Zombies, and a few others that were up for nomination but did not make it this year.
All right, we got fill in the blank and a lot more guests coming up. Stay with us on Golic and Wingo.
Okay.